Welcome to Secret of the Zodiac, the cosmic corner of the internet, where we decode the celestial patterns that shape our personalities, relationships, and life paths. Today, we're exploring one of the most fascinating and controversial aspects of the Zodiac's most ambitious sign, the uncanny tendency of Capricorns to be right time and time again. If you've ever found yourself in a debate with a Capricorn, you've likely experienced that particular moment of realization, that subtle shift when you suddenly understand they've been correct all along. Perhaps it was a business decision they cautioned against that ultimately proved disastrous. Maybe it was their assessment of someone's character that revealed itself to be spot on months later. Or possibly it was their quiet prediction about how events would unfold that materialized exactly as they described. This phenomenon isn't just anecdotal. Across cultures and contexts, Capricorns have gained a reputation as the Zodiac's resident sages, the ones whose advice, however unwelcome in the moment, eventually proves prophetic. They're not flashy about it. Unlike some signs that might celebrate their correctness with a triumphant, "I told you so," Capricorns typically acknowledge the validation with nothing more than a subtle nod or knowing glance. Their satisfaction comes not from public vindication, but from the private confirmation of their carefully constructed worldview. Before we continue this cosmic exploration, take a moment to join our astrological community by subscribing to Secret of the Zodiac. Each week, we deliver insights that go beyond surface-level sun sign horoscopes, diving into the rich complexity of planetary interactions, house systems, and ancient wisdom. A quick tap on that like button also helps our content reach fellow seekers who might benefit from these celestial revelations. What makes this topic particularly intriguing is how divisive it can be. For those who align with Capricorn energy, whether as their sun, moon, rising, or prominent placement, this video offers validation of their often misunderstood approach to life. For those who frequently find themselves at odds with Capricorns, this exploration provides valuable insight into why these encounters can feel so challenging and what might be learned from them. It's important to clarify that claiming Capricorns are always right isn't about painting them as infallible or superior. Every sign has strengths, weaknesses, blind spots, and gifts. What we're examining today is a specific cognitive and perceptual pattern that Capricorn energy tends to manifest, a particular approach to understanding and navigating reality that often yields accurate assessments and predictions. This pattern doesn't emerge from nowhere. It's rooted in Capricorn's unique position in the zodiacal journey. As the 10th sign, Capricorn represents the culmination of worldly wisdom, the integration of practical experience with disciplined thought. Symbolized by the mountain goat steadily ascending toward the summit, Capricorns embody patient progress and the broad perspective that comes from higher vantage points. Their ruler, Saturn, the planet of structure, time, and consequences, grants them a natural attunement to cause and effect relationships that other signs might overlook. What we're exploring today isn't just astrology, it's a particular cognitive style that corresponds with Capricorn energy. Whether you believe these traits come from celestial influence or simply recognize them as a coherent personality type, understanding the Capricorn approach offers valuable insight into different ways of processing information and making decisions. Over the next few minutes, we'll break down 12 specific reasons why Capricorns so often find themselves on the correct side of arguments, predictions, and decisions. We'll examine their unique mental processes, relationship with information, emotional discipline, and philosophical frameworks that contribute to their high batting average in the game of being right. These aren't magical powers or supernatural abilities. They're specific cognitive strengths and habits that anyone can potentially develop regardless of their sign. But for those with prominent Capricorn placements, these approaches often come naturally, part of their inherent orientation to the world. Let's begin by examining the first 3 fundamental reasons behind the Capricorn's reputation for correctness. The first key to understanding why Capricorns so often arrive at the right conclusion lies in their extraordinary strategic patience, a mental approach that fundamentally differs from how most people engage with problems. While many of us rush toward immediate solutions or quick judgments, Capricorns naturally extend their timeline, allowing scenarios to unfold in their minds like master chess players visualizing multiple moves ahead. Consider the case of Eleanor, a Capricorn executive who saved her company from a disastrous merger. When a seemingly perfect partnership opportunity arose, her colleagues saw only the immediate benefits: increased market share, complementary product lines, and impressive short-term financial projections. The boardroom buzzed with excitement, everyone eager to move forward with what appeared to be an obvious win. Eleanor, however, remained quiet through most of the discussion, carefully observing and occasionally asking penetrating questions that seemed tangential to some. What happens if their pending patent application is rejected? How would cultural integration work between our East Coast operation and their predominantly remote workforce? What contingencies exist for the regulatory changes likely coming next year? Her colleagues grew frustrated, seeing her caution as needless delay or even opposition to progress. But Eleanor wasn't being difficult. She was playing chess while others played checkers. 6 months later, when the potential partner company faced exactly the patent issues, workforce integration problems, and regulatory challenges she had identified, her foresight prevented what would have been a costly mistake. "I'm not psychic," Eleanor explained later. "I just naturally think in longer sequences than most people. It's not about being negative, it's about seeing the full path, including obstacles that aren't immediately visible from the starting point." This strategic patience isn't limited to business contexts. Thomas, a Capricorn architect, applied the same forward-thinking approach to his personal relationships. When friends rushed into romantic commitments based on intense initial attraction, Thomas consistently took months longer to define relationships, frustrating several potential partners who mistook his patience for lack of interest. "I'm visualizing what our conflicts might look like before we have them," he explained. "I'm thinking about how our values align, not just for now, but for potential life changes. I'm not hesitating, I'm being thorough." His now 15-year marriage stands in stark contrast to the multiple divorces many of his more impulsive friends have navigated. The second reason Capricorns tend toward correctness involves their habitual calculation of multiple possible outcomes, not just the obvious ones, but unlikely scenarios, edge cases, and cascade effects that others typically overlook. This thoroughness in scenario planning creates a mental map far more detailed than what most people work with. Sophia, a Capricorn city planner, demonstrated this ability during a contentious infrastructure project. While other stakeholders focused on 2 or 3 primary outcomes of a proposed transportation redesign, Sophia arrived at a community meeting with analysis of 17 different scenarios, including several that initially seemed improbable, but ultimately proved crucial. One scenario involved how emergency vehicle access would change if we experienced a once-in-50 years flood event during rush hour with a power outage, she recalled. "People actually laughed when I brought it up. 6 years later, exactly such a confluence of events occurred, and her design modifications saved lives. What seemed like excessive caution revealed itself as necessary foresight." This outcome mapping isn't merely about identifying potential problems. It's about seeing hidden opportunities as well. When Marcus, a Capricorn investor, purchased land that others had dismissed as worthless due to zoning restrictions, colleagues questioned his judgment, but Marcus had mapped multiple possible futures for the property, including a zoning change that others considered unlikely. "I didn't just see one potential outcome where the zoning changed," he explained. "I saw 7 different scenarios, 5 where the investment failed and 2 where it succeeded. But I also calculated that even a 20% chance of success would yield returns that justified the risk." When the zoning indeed changed 3 years later, his property value increased tenfold, validating his multidimensional analysis. The third core reason behind Capricorn correctness is perhaps the most powerful: their ability to separate emotion from analysis, producing conclusions based on reality rather than wishful thinking. This emotional discipline doesn't mean Capricorns don't feel deeply. Rather, they've developed the ability to recognize and compartmentalize feelings that might cloud judgment. Dr. Abigail Jensen, a Capricorn research scientist, displayed this quality during a pharmaceutical trial when preliminary data suggested the team's promising cancer treatment was ineffective, while team members who had invested years in the project desperately wanted to interpret the ambiguous results positively. Abigail calmly led them through an unsparing analysis. "I wanted the treatment to work as much as anyone," she later shared. "My own mother died of the same cancer we were trying to treat, but wanting something to be true doesn't make it true, and the data deserved honest interpretation." Her emotional discipline led to the trial's early termination, saving millions in continued investment in an ineffective treatment and redirecting resources to more promising approaches. This ability to separate emotion from analysis serves Capricorns particularly well during crises or high-stakes decisions, precisely when others are most likely to let feelings override facts. James, a Capricorn emergency management director, credits this quality with his effective response during a natural disaster. "When everyone else was either panicking or in denial, I was able to assess the situation clearly," he recalled. "It's not that I didn't feel the fear or the hope that others did. I simply didn't allow those emotions to determine which information I paid attention to or how I interpreted it." These first three qualities, strategic patience, comprehensive outcome mapping, and emotional discipline, form a powerful cognitive foundation that explains much of why Capricorns so consistently arrive at correct conclusions. They see further ahead, consider more possibilities, and evaluate evidence more objectively than most, a combination that naturally leads to superior judgment in countless situations. As we continue exploring the Capricorn mind, we'll discover how these foundational cognitive approaches combine with their unique relationship to knowledge systems and information processing to further enhance their decision-making accuracy. The Capricorn's unique relationship to knowledge systems and information processing further enhances their decision-making accuracy. The fourth reason behind the Capricorn's tendency to be right reveals itself in their intuitive understanding of systems and hierarchies. Unlike many who see only isolated parts, Capricorns naturally perceive the interconnected whole, allowing them to navigate complexities others miss entirely. This systems thinking provides insights into how and why things work at a fundamental level. Diana exemplified this quality during her first year as hospital administrator. While her predecessors had addressed persistent staffing issues by simply hiring more nurses, a seemingly obvious solution, Diana spent her initial months mapping the entire hospital ecosystem. Through careful observation, she identified unexpected connections between departments, information flows, and decision processes. Everyone was focused on the symptom, nurse shortages, rather than the system causing it, she explained. "I discovered that administrative burdens had increased 40% over 5 years, taking nurses away from patient care. The problem wasn't too few nurses, it was too many forms, redundant protocols, and fragmented communication channels. By restructuring these underlying systems, rather than simply adding more personnel, Diana resolved issues that had plagued the hospital for nearly a decade. When asked how she saw what others had missed, she shrugged. I naturally think in terms of relationships and connections. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is part of a larger structure." This systems perspective served Rajiv equally well in a completely different context. As a Capricorn software architect working on a troubled development project, he inherited a situation where individual components functioned perfectly, yet somehow failed when integrated. The team was full of brilliant specialists, each focused on their particular module, he recalled. But no one was thinking about the architecture as a whole, how data flowed between components, how resource limitations affected overall performance, how user actions created cascading effects throughout the system. Rajiv's natural grasp of these complex interactions allowed him to identify and resolve integration issues that had baffled others for months. "I'm not necessarily smarter than my colleagues," he insisted. "I just instinctively see the connections they sometimes miss." The fifth element in the Capricorn's cognitive toolkit, impressive pattern recognition. builds upon this system's understanding by connecting historical precedents to current situations. Where others might see each scenario as unique, Capricorns identify recurring patterns in human behavior and institutional responses, providing crucial context for predictions. Helena's career in financial regulation illustrates this capacity with remarkable clarity. During a period when markets were euphoric about new financial instruments, promising unprecedented returns with minimal risk, she was among the few voices urging caution. Everyone kept saying, "This time is different," she remembered. But I recognized the same patterns that preceded previous financial crises: excessive leverage, complex instruments obscuring risk, regulatory capture, and widespread dismissal of skeptics as out-of-touch pessimists. Her warnings were largely ignored until the market collapsed exactly as she had predicted. When later asked how she had foreseen what so many brilliant minds had missed, she cited her attention to historical patterns. Finance has remarkably consistent cycles if you study them across centuries rather than just recent decades. The specifics change, but the fundamental human behaviors driving booms and busts remain constant. This pattern recognition extends beyond professional settings. Michael, a Capricorn teacher, applied the same historical awareness to school reform initiatives. When a new teaching methodology was embraced with almost religious fervor in his district, he maintained measured skepticism. "I'd seen this cycle repeat throughout my 30-year career," he explained. "Every decade brings a revolutionary approach that promises to transform education. Districts invest heavily, train teachers, reorganize classrooms, and within 5 years, quietly move on to the next innovation when results don't match the hype." Rather than dismissing the new methodology entirely, Michael identified which elements represented genuine improvements and which simply repackaged previously tried approaches. This discernment allowed him to implement effective changes while avoiding disruptive overhauls that would ultimately prove temporary, a balanced response that history eventually vindicated. The sixth quality that makes Capricorn so often right is perhaps the most straightforward yet frequently overlooked. They simply research topics more thoroughly before forming opinions. While others might form conclusions based on headlines, summaries, or popular narratives, Capricorns display remarkable diligence in building comprehensive knowledge bases on subjects that matter to them. Eliza demonstrated this quality when her community faced a contentious decision about water rights. As debate grew increasingly polarized between environmental and development interests, most residents formed strong opinions based on whichever perspective aligned with their existing values. Eliza took a different approach. For 3 months, she immersed herself in studying the watershed's ecology, reviewing legal precedents in similar cases, examining economic impact analyses, and even interviewing hydrologists to understand technical aspects beyond most laypeople's grasp. "People were surprised when I didn't immediately take a side," she recalled. "Both camps expected me to align with them based on my background, but I didn't want to form an opinion until I actually understood the issue from multiple perspectives." When she finally spoke at a community meeting, her nuanced position, which acknowledged legitimate concerns from both sides while identifying compromise solutions others had overlooked, shifted the entire conversation. Several longtime opponents commented that her thorough research had changed their thinking on issues they thought were settled in their minds. "Most people stop researching once they find information that confirms what they already believe," Eliza observed. "I keep going until I understand the strongest arguments from every perspective, especially those I initially disagree with." This commitment to thorough research combines with the Capricorn's natural skepticism towards simplified narratives. When Emily was considering a major career transition, friends enthusiastically shared success stories of others who had made similar changes, focusing on inspiring outcomes while glossing over challenges. Rather than being swayed by these curated narratives, Emily conducted methodical research, interviewing 30 people who had made similar transitions, reading industry analyses, identifying both opportunities and obstacles, and even taking temporary project work to test her assumptions about the new field. "My friends thought I was being needlessly cautious or pessimistic," she recalled. But I wasn't looking for reasons not to change. I was looking for a complete picture that included both opportunities and challenges. This thorough approach led to a successful transition, precisely because she had anticipated and prepared for difficulties others might have been blindsided by. These three qualities, systems thinking, pattern recognition, and thorough research, combined to create a powerful framework for understanding why Capricorns so frequently arrive at correct assessments. Their natural grasp of how complex systems function, their awareness of historical patterns, and their commitment to comprehensive knowledge acquisition provide a multidimensional perspective that simply processes reality more accurately than most approaches. The philosophical dimensions of the Capricorn approach further illuminate why their judgments so often prove correct over time. The seventh quality that leads to Capricorn correctness is their natural skepticism, a healthy reluctance to accept convenient narratives without proper verification. This skepticism serves as a powerful cognitive filter in an era when misinformation travels faster than ever before. Alexandra's experience as a Capricorn journalist illustrates how this skepticism operates as both shield and compass. When a breaking story about corporate malfeasance generated outrage across social media platforms, newsrooms everywhere rushed to publish follow-up pieces. The allegations aligned perfectly with public suspicions about the industry, creating what seemed like an obvious narrative arc. While her colleagues at competing publications immediately amplified the claims, Alexandra maintained a measured distance. Something about the documentation didn't feel right, she recalled. The evidence was too neat, too perfectly aligned with what people already believed. That's not usually how real scandals emerge. Despite pressure from editors to publish quickly and capitalize on the trending topic, Alexandra insisted on additional verification steps, reviewing original documents rather than summaries, consulting independent experts about technical details, and attempting to reach multiple parties mentioned in the allegations. I was called overly cautious, accused of missing the story, even warned that I was harming my career, she said. But fundamental questions remained unanswered, and I wasn't comfortable proceeding without those answers. 3 weeks later, her caution proved prescient when the original story unraveled completely. Key documents were revealed to be sophisticated forgeries, created specifically to exploit existing public sentiment. While other journalists faced embarrassing retractions, Alexandra had published nothing requiring correction. Skepticism isn't about cynicism or disbelief, she explained. It's about recognizing that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the more perfectly a story aligns with what people want to believe, the more carefully it should be scrutinized. This skeptical orientation protects Capricorns not just from external misinformation, but from their own cognitive biases, creating a double layer of protection against flawed conclusions. The eighth reason Capricorns tend toward correctness involves their unwavering commitment to practicality over theory. While some signs might be seduced by elegant theoretical frameworks that promise comprehensive explanations, Capricorns maintain a relentless focus on what actually works in real-world conditions. Daniel's journey as a Capricorn urban farmer demonstrates this pragmatic approach. When he first established his agricultural project in an abandoned city lot, well-meaning advisors overwhelmed him with competing philosophical frameworks: permaculture, biodynamics, vertical farming, hydroponics, each promising optimal results through adherence to specific theoretical principles. Rather than pledging allegiance to any single approach, Daniel adopted a radically practical methodology. I created test plots implementing different systems side by side and simply measured the results: yield, resource requirements, resilience to weather fluctuations, and labor intensity, he explained. Theories are useful starting points, but they all contain assumptions that may not apply to my specific conditions. Over 5 growing seasons, this commitment to practical results rather than theoretical purity allowed him to develop a hybrid system that outperformed any single approach. When purists from various schools criticized his methodological mixing, he simply pointed to his harvest data. "I'm not interested in being theoretically correct," he noted. I'm interested in growing food efficiently in an urban environment with specific constraints. The plants don't care which theory they're supposed to be following. This pragmatic orientation grounds Capricorn thinking in reality rather than ideological preferences. It's not that they lack vision or principles. Rather, they refuse to let attachment to beautiful theories override evidence about what actually functions in practice. The ninth dimension of Capricorn correctness emerges from their remarkable self-awareness, an unusual capacity to recognize and address their own potential biases before these distortions can compromise their judgment. Sophia's experience navigating a complex family business succession illustrates this quality in action. As the Capricorn CEO of a third-generation manufacturing company, she found herself responsible for evaluating several relatives for leadership positions, including her own children. I recognized immediately that this situation was fraught with potential for biased judgment, she recalled. I had pre-existing relationships, emotional attachments, and personal history with every candidate. Pretending those factors wouldn't influence my thinking would be naive. Rather than denying these potential distortions, Sophia designed a systematic approach to counteract them. She created blind evaluation processes where possible, appointed independent advisors with veto power over her recommendations, and most importantly, documented her own potential biases in writing before beginning evaluations. I literally made a list of ways I might be unfair to each candidate, where I might be too harsh or too lenient based on personal history, she explained. By naming these biases explicitly, I created the possibility of compensating for them. This extraordinary level of self-awareness allowed Sophia to navigate the succession process with remarkable fairness, ultimately appointing a leadership team that surprised many observers but proved exceptionally effective. Several family members, initially disappointed by the outcome, later acknowledged the wisdom of decisions they had originally perceived as unfair. Perfect objectivity is impossible when you're human, Sophia reflected. But by being honest with yourself about your blind spots, you can establish systems that correct for them. The goal isn't to eliminate bias entirely, it's to recognize and counterbalance it. This capacity for self-correction appears consistently in Capricorns across diverse fields. Martin, a Capricorn researcher, built his scientific reputation on his unusual willingness to identify weaknesses in his own studies. My colleagues often seem more invested in defending their conclusions than in ensuring their accuracy, he observed. I'm more interested in getting to the truth than in being right. Paradoxically, this makes me right more often because I'm continuously checking my work against my known tendencies towards certain errors. These three philosophical orientations, healthy skepticism toward convenient narratives, commitment to practical results over elegant theories, and remarkable self-awareness about potential biases, create a cognitive ecosystem remarkably resistant to the common errors that compromise other decision-making processes. Capricorns aren't immune to mistakes, but their philosophical approach includes powerful safeguards against the most common sources of error. This combination of skepticism, pragmatism, and self-awareness creates a particularly valuable perspective in collaborative settings, where Capricorns often serve as essential reality checks against groupthink, theoretical overreach, or unacknowledged biases. Their correctness benefits not just themselves but entire communities and organizations fortunate enough to incorporate their unique cognitive approach. The ethical dimensions of Capricorn thinking round out our understanding of why they so frequently prove correct in their assessments and decisions. The 10th quality driving Capricorn correctness is their deep commitment to excellence, a standard that prevents them from stating something as fact unless they're certain it's accurate. Unlike those who speak confidently on topics they only partially understand, Capricorns maintain an intellectual humility that paradoxically enhances their credibility over time. Jonathan's career as a Capricorn medical researcher exemplifies this commitment to accuracy above all else. During a high-profile conference where preliminary findings from competing labs were being presented, most researchers made ambitious claims about the implications of their work, drawing sweeping conclusions that generated excitement among attendees and journalists. When Jonathan's turn came, His presentation stood out for its measured tone. Despite working on one of the most promising treatment approaches, he carefully distinguished between established findings and speculative possibilities, explicitly identifying the limitations of current data and highlighting questions that remained unanswered. Some colleagues suggested I was undermining our lab's work by being so cautious, he recalled. They felt I should have made stronger claims to secure funding and public support, but I can't bring myself to present as settled what I know remains uncertain. 2 years later, when most of the boldly announced breakthroughs from that conference had quietly disappeared from discussion, Jonathan's research had progressed steadily from strength to strength. The credibility he had established through intellectual honesty made his lab's genuine advances all the more influential when they were finally announced with confidence. There's tremendous pressure in both academic and commercial research to oversell preliminary findings, he reflected. But once you've claimed certainty prematurely, you've compromised not just your credibility, but your own relationship with the truth. I'd rather be honest about what we don't yet know than be remembered for claims that didn't withstand scrutiny. This commitment to excellence manifests not as perfectionism, but as a fundamental respect for accuracy, a value that serves Capricorns particularly well in an era when premature certainty often receives more attention than measured assessment. The 11th characteristic that contributes to Capricorn correctness is their unmatched ability to delay gratification, giving them perspective on long-term consequences that others frequently overlook. While more impulsive signs might focus exclusively on immediate outcomes, Capricorns naturally consider how decisions will unfold over extended time horizons. Eliza's approach to urban planning demonstrates this extended perspective in action. As a Capricorn City Council member, she frequently found herself at odds with colleagues pursuing faster, more visible results. When revitalizing a struggling downtown district, most officials supported quick-win projects, decorative improvements, event programming, and incentives to fill vacant storefronts as rapidly as possible. While acknowledging the value of these initiatives, Eliza advocated for simultaneous investment in less immediately visible infrastructure, upgrading century-old water lines, modernizing the electrical grid, and improving foundational systems that would never make headlines but would determine the district's viability for decades to come. My colleagues wanted changes they could photograph for re-election campaigns, she observed. I wanted changes that would still be serving the city when our grandchildren were grown. Both matter, but the invisible foundations determine whether the visible improvements last. Her perspective generated significant friction initially, with accusations that she was obstructing progress and missing opportunities for quick wins. The city ultimately adopted a hybrid approach, balancing immediate improvements with longer-term investments. 15 years later, as other revitalized districts in the region began experiencing system failures that undermined their renaissance, the area Eliza had championed continued to thrive. The foundational investments that had seemed unnecessarily cautious to some had created capacity for sustainable growth rather than just cosmetic improvement. People often mistake delayed gratification for pessimism, Eliza reflected, but it's actually profound optimism, believing that the future matters enough to invest in it now, even when those investments aren't immediately rewarded. This extended time horizon allows Capricorns to make assessments that initially appear wrong, but prove prescient as time passes. Their correctness often emerges not in the immediate aftermath of decisions, but in the longer arc where consequences fully manifest. The 12th and final quality that underpins Capricorn correctness is their fundamental integrity, an unwavering commitment to intellectual honesty that prevents them from taking shortcuts, even when such shortcuts would be convenient or personally beneficial. Marcus embodied this integrity throughout his career as a Capricorn financial advisor. During the height of a market bubble, when clients were desperate to participate in seemingly easy gains, he maintained a consistent message about fundamental value and sustainable growth that made him increasingly unpopular as speculative assets soared. Clients would come to meetings with articles about acquaintances making fortunes overnight in dubious investments, he remembered. Some became quite angry when I advised caution, accusing me of keeping them from opportunities. A few fired me outright to work with advisors promising more aggressive strategies. Despite the professional cost, Marcus refused to adjust his guidance to match the euphoria of the moment. He continued evaluating investments based on fundamental metrics rather than momentum, even when this approach was dramatically underperforming more speculative strategies. There were certainly days I questioned myself, he admitted. Watching others profit from approaches I considered unsound tested my resolve, but I couldn't in good conscience recommend investments I believed would ultimately harm my clients, even if that harm might take years to become apparent. When the bubble inevitably collapsed, Marcus found himself with a practice that had grown smaller but far more loyal. Clients who had stayed through the difficult period of underperformance now found their portfolios relatively unscathed, while friends and colleagues faced devastating losses. Integrity isn't about being righteous or inflexible, Marcus reflected. It's about maintaining alignment between what you truly believe and what you're willing to say and do. Sometimes that alignment comes at a significant cost in the short term, but it's the foundation of any meaningful long-term success. This unwavering commitment to intellectual honesty means Capricorns won't cherry-pick data to support predetermined conclusions or engage in wishful thinking to avoid uncomfortable truths. Their thinking processes are simply more reliable by design because they refuse to take shortcuts that compromise accuracy. These final three qualities, commitment to excellence, capacity for delayed gratification, and fundamental integrity, complete our understanding of why Capricorns so often find themselves on the correct side of arguments, predictions, and decisions. Their approach isn't magical or infallible, but it incorporates numerous safeguards against the cognitive errors that commonly lead others astray. The Capricorn way isn't for everyone. It requires patience in a world that rewards speed, discipline, in a culture that celebrates spontaneity, and sometimes isolation when maintaining unpopular but correct positions. Yet for those willing to learn from this approach, it offers a pathway to more reliable judgment across countless domains. The next time you find yourself irritated by a Capricorn's caution, skepticism, or insistence on verification, consider that these very qualities might be saving you from errors you don't yet recognize. Their correctness isn't accidental. It's the natural outcome of a cognitive approach designed, layer by layer, to align perception as closely as possible with reality. Throughout our exploration of the Capricornian mind, we've uncovered 12 distinct cognitive qualities that explain why this zodiac sign so frequently arrives at correct conclusions, even when those conclusions initially appear counter to prevailing wisdom. From their strategic patience that allows them to see multiple moves ahead, to their fundamental integrity that prevents intellectual shortcuts, Capricorns embody an approach to understanding reality that inherently minimizes common errors. We've seen how their comprehensive calculation of potential outcomes creates a mental map far more detailed than what most people work with. Their emotional discipline enables clear assessment untainted by wishful thinking, while their intuitive grasp of systems and hierarchies allows them to navigate complexities others might miss entirely. Their pattern recognition connects historical precedents to current situations, providing crucial context that illuminates likely outcomes. We've explored how their commitment to thorough research ensures they form opinions based on comprehensive understanding rather than superficial impressions. Their healthy skepticism protects them from accepting convenient narratives without proper verification, while their relentless focus on practical results grounds their thinking in reality rather than ideological preferences or elegant but flawed theories. We've examined their remarkable self-awareness that allows them to identify and address their own potential biases, their commitment to excellence that prevents them from claiming certainty prematurely, and their capacity for delayed gratification that gives them perspective on long-term consequences others might overlook. Finally, we've seen how their fundamental integrity creates a cognitive ecosystem remarkably resistant to the shortcuts and self-deception that compromise other decision-making processes. These qualities don't make Capricorns infallible, they make mistakes like everyone else. but their approach significantly improves their batting average in the game of being right, creating a track record that earns them reputations as wise counselors, visionary leaders, and trusted advisors across countless domains. For those of us not born under this sign, understanding the Capricorn approach offers valuable lessons we can selectively incorporate into our own thinking. We might not naturally embody all 12 qualities, but we can certainly develop aspects of this cognitive style to enhance our own decision-making and judgment. If you found value in this deep dive into Capricorn cognition, we invite you to join our astrological community by subscribing to Secret of the Zodiac. Our channel goes beyond surface-level sun sign descriptions to explore the rich psychological and philosophical dimensions of astrological wisdom. Each week, we publish new content examining how different signs perceive, process, and navigate reality, providing insights that can transform your understanding of both yourself and others. Take a moment to explore our library of previous videos, where you'll find similarly detailed analyses of each zodiac sign, along with explorations of compatibility dynamics, planetary influences, and practical applications of astrological knowledge in daily life. Our Capricorn playlist offers additional perspectives on this fascinating sign, including career guidance, relationship insights, and historical examinations of famous Capricorns who changed the world. We're particularly interested in hearing your experiences with Capricorn thinking. Are you a Capricorn who recognizes these qualities in yourself? Have you benefited from the counsel of a Capricorn whose judgment proved prescient? Or perhaps you found yourself frustrated by a Capricorn's caution when you were eager to move forward. Share your stories in the comments section with the phrase, "Capricorn was right about," and complete the sentence with your personal experience. Your engagement through likes, comments, and shares helps our content reach others who might benefit from these astrological insights. The algorithm gods favor videos with active community participation, so your involvement directly supports our mission of bringing deeper astrological understanding to wider audiences. For those who find particular value in our work and wish to support its continuation, we invite you to consider using the Super Thanks feature. Creating this type of in-depth astrological content requires substantial research, production resources, and time commitments that go far beyond what's needed for more superficial zodiac content. Your financial support through Super Thanks directly enables us to maintain this depth while increasing our production schedule to deliver daily videos exploring different facets of astrological wisdom. The costs associated with creating professional quality astrological content, from research materials and production equipment to the time required for script development and editing, are significant. Your support through Super Thanks helps ensure we can continue bringing you content that treats astrology with the intellectual seriousness and psychological depth it deserves, rather than reducing it to simplistic personality descriptions or vague predictions. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Capricorn mind. Until our cosmic paths cross again in the next video, remember that understanding the stars isn't about predicting the future. It's about recognizing the different ways of perceiving and processing reality that make each sign a unique lens through which to view our shared experience. The Capricorn lens, as we've discovered, offers a particularly clear view, one that cuts through illusion to reveal the underlying structures that shape our world.